Most people who work closing shifts have a routine. That is what makes them easy to watch. You lock the same door, count the same drawer, turn off the same lights, take out the trash at the same time, then walk to the same car in the same dark parking lot. After a few weeks, you stop thinking about it, but sometimes someone else starts noticing. These are 3 closing shift horror stories from people who learned too late that their routine was not as private as they thought. The first time I saw him, he was buying a lighter. The second time, he was standing outside the locked front door, smiling like he had never left. This happened when I was 22. I was working at a small gas station just outside a college town in Ohio. It was not some creepy place in the middle of nowhere. It was normal. Bright lights, bad coffee, lottery tickets, energy drinks, and a cooler that made a loud humming sound all night. The store closed at midnight. Most nights, the last hour was quiet. I would mop the coffee area, restock the cooler, count cigarettes, and start shutting down the register a few minutes before close. There were cameras, but they were old. The owner always said they worked fine, but the picture was grainy, and the monitor in the office had a delay. I was working alone that night because the other cashier had called out. At around 11:42, a man came in. He looked normal enough. Mid-30s maybe, gray hoodie, jeans, work boots. He did not look drunk. He did not look nervous. He grabbed a lighter from the counter display and a bottle of water from the cooler. When he came to the register, he kept looking past me toward the hallway where the restroom and back office were. I rang him up and told him the total. He paid in cash. Before he left, he asked,
"You close by yourself?"
I did not answer right away. It was not a crazy question, but the way he asked it felt too casual, like he already knew the answer and wanted to see what I would say. So I told him, no. My manager is in the office. He looked toward the office door. Then he smiled a little and said,
"Good."
That was it. He walked out, got into a dark SUV parked near the side of the building, and drove away. I remember watching the taillights disappear toward the highway and feeling stupid for being uneasy. People said weird things all the time late at night. I told myself it was nothing. At 11:55, I locked the front door. We were supposed to stay open until midnight, but my manager had always told us that if there were no customers in the lot, we could lock up a few minutes early and finish cleaning. I turned the sign to closed, shut off the lights over the drink machines, and started counting the drawer. At 12:03, someone tried the front door. Not a knock. The handle moved hard. I froze behind the counter with cash still spread out in front of me. The door rattled again. I looked up and saw the same man from earlier standing outside the glass. He lifted one hand and pointed at the door, like I had accidentally locked him out. I shook my head and mouthed that we were closed. He leaned closer to the glass. I could not hear him, but I could see his mouth move. I left something. I pointed to the clock and shook my head again. He did not leave. He stood there for a few seconds, then knocked on the glass with 2 fingers. Then he held up his wallet and pointed inside. I thought maybe he had left his card, but then I remembered he had paid with cash. The store phone rang. I jumped. I looked at the caller ID, unknown number. I did not want to answer it, but I also did not want him to keep knocking on the glass, so I picked it up. Before I could say anything, he said, "I left my phone in the bathroom." His voice was calm. Too calm. I looked toward the hallway. The bathroom door was visible from the counter, but only partly. The light inside it was off. I said, "I can check tomorrow morning." He said, "I need it now." I told him I could not let anyone inside after close. There was a pause. Then he said, "You don't have to let me in. Just go get it." That was when it hit me. If he had left his phone in the bathroom, how was he calling the store? I looked back at the front door. He was still outside, holding a phone to his ear. I hung up. For a few seconds, he did not move. Then he smiled again. I grabbed my cell phone and called my manager. No answer. The man outside stepped away from the front door. I thought he was leaving, but he walked along the windows toward the side of the building. There was a narrow sidewalk there that led to the delivery entrance. That door was supposed to stay locked from the outside, but employees used it to take out trash. I went into the office and looked at the camera monitor. The front camera showed the empty entrance. The side camera was frozen, not black, frozen. It showed the side door with the timestamp stuck at 10:18. I picked up my phone and called 911. While I was telling the dispatcher where I was, I heard something from the back of the store. Not the front door. The hallway. It sounded like the bathroom door opening. I stopped talking. The dispatcher asked if I was still there. I whispered yes. Then I heard the soft squeak of a shoe on the tile. The sound came from the hallway near the restroom. I backed into the office and locked the door. The office did not have a real lock. It was one of those cheap push-button locks you would find on a bedroom door. But it was better than standing out in the open. I turned off the office light and crouched beside the desk. From there, I could still see the monitor. The camera over the register showed the empty counter. Then, a shadow moved at the edge of the frame. Someone was inside the store. I could hear slow footsteps moving down the main aisle. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way and asked how many people were inside. I said I thought there were 2. The footsteps stopped outside the office. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then the handle moved once. Then again. A man's voice said, "Hey." It was not loud. He said it like he was trying not to scare me.
"Hey, I know you're in there."
I did not answer. He tried the handle again. Then he tapped on the door with his knuckle. Same pattern as the glass. I heard another sound from the back. The side door. The man outside was there now. The 2 of them spoke quietly, but I could not make out the words. One voice was inside the store. One was outside. That was when I understood. The man at the front door had not come back because he left something. He came back to keep me looking at him. The other one had been inside the building the whole time. The police arrived a few minutes later. When the first patrol car pulled into the lot, the man inside the store ran toward the back hallway. I heard the delivery door slam. The officers caught one of them near the ditch behind the gas station. The other one got away in the SUV. I stayed in the office until an officer came to the door and said my name. They checked the bathroom first. The stall door was closed. Inside one of the stalls, they found a fast food cup, a pair of thin gloves, and a cheap folding knife sitting on the toilet paper dispenser. The next day, my manager reviewed the footage. The man in the hoodie had come in at 11:42, bought the lighter and water, and left. But while he was at the counter, a second man had slipped in behind another customer. He walked straight to the restroom. He never came out. For almost 20 minutes, I had been closing the store with someone hiding less than 30 feet away. The side camera had not frozen because of a glitch. Someone had unplugged it from inside the storage room at 10:18, more than an hour before the man in the hoodie came in. That meant they had been there earlier, or they had done this before. I quit the next morning. A week later, the owner called me because the police wanted to ask more questions. They had pulled footage from 2 previous nights and found the same dark SUV parked across the road near a closed car wash. It had been there both nights during closing. I still think about how normal he looked when he bought that lighter. No mask. No weapon in his hand. No rush. Just a man learning the store, waiting for the exact minute when the door would lock and I would be alone inside. At the pharmacy, the back door made a short beep every time it opened. 1 beep when it opened. 2 beeps when it closed. I had heard that sound hundreds of times. That night, I heard 1 beep. And then, nothing. I was 19 when this happened. I worked closing shifts at a small pharmacy in a strip mall. It was not a big chain store. It was one of those local places where the pharmacist knew half the customers by name and the front shelves had more greeting cards and cough drops than anything else. We closed at 9 p.m. Usually there were 3 people working until close, me at the front register, the pharmacist, and 1 tech. But on Thursdays, the pharmacist left right at 9 because he had to open early the next morning. I stayed another 20 minutes to count the register, shut off the lights, and put the deposit bag in the safe. The back door opened into a narrow alley behind the strip mall. Employees used it for trash. There was a small sensor above it that beeped at the front counter whenever the door opened or closed. During the day, it was annoying. At night, it was useful. You always knew when someone went in or out. That Thursday was slow. Around 8:30, a man came in asking for allergy medicine. He looked like he was in his late 40s. Baseball cap, dark jacket, one hand in his pocket. He did not seem dangerous, just quiet, but he also did not seem to know what he wanted. He picked up 1 box of medicine, put it back, walked to another aisle, then came to the counter with nothing. He asked what time we closed. I told him 9. He asked if the pharmacist stayed after closing. I said no. Then he asked, "But someone stays up front, right?" I told him no. The store closed at 9. He nodded like that was all he needed to know. Then he left without buying anything. I did not think much of it. People came in confused all the time, especially older customers. At 8:58, the pharmacist told me he was leaving. The tech had already taken the trash out and left through the back. I watched the pharmacist lock the pharmacy gate, grab his jacket, and walk out the front. I locked the front door right at 9. Then, I started closing. I counted the drawer, printed the receipt roll, turned off the sign, shut down the lights in the card aisle. The store looked different when half the lights were off. Not scary exactly, just empty in a way that made every small sound stand out. At 9:12, I was in the office putting the deposit bag into the safe when I heard it. 1 short beep. The back door had opened. I waited for the second beep. It never came. I stood there for a few seconds, listening. The office was in the back, maybe 10 feet from the door. If someone had gone outside with trash, I would have heard the alley door close. But there was no closing sound, no footsteps either. Just silence. I stepped out of the office and looked down the short hallway. The back door looked shut. I walked closer and saw the latch was not fully caught. The door was resting against the frame, but it had not clicked into place. For a second, I thought the tech must have left it like that earlier. Then I remembered hearing the beep at 9:12. That meant the door had opened after I was already alone. I pushed it shut. 2 beeps came from the front counter. Then the store phone rang. The sound made me jump. I answered from the office phone. A man said,
"Are you still open?"
I told him no. He said,
"Then why is your back door open?"
I did not answer. His voice was quiet, older, close to a whisper. I looked toward the hallway again. The back door was shut now. I said, "Who is this?" He hung up. I locked the office door. The office had a small window facing the alley. The blinds were always closed, but one of the slats was bent. If you stood close enough, you could see a thin strip of the alley behind the store. I looked through it. There was a silver sedan parked near the dumpster. Its lights were off. It was not directly behind our door. It was a little farther down, almost hidden in the shadow between our building and the nail salon next door. I called the pharmacist. He answered on the second ring. I told him someone might be behind the store. He asked if I had locked the front. I said yes. He told me to stay in the office and call the police. While I was dialing, I heard the beep again. 1 beep. The back door opened. This time I could see the hallway from where I was standing. The door moved, maybe 2 inches. Not enough for someone to walk in. Just enough for the sensor to catch it. Then it stopped. No second beep. No footsteps. Nothing. I told the dispatcher what was happening. She told me to stay where I was and not go near the door. I crouched behind the desk with my phone against my ear. The store phone rang again. I did not answer. It rang 6 times and stopped. A few seconds later, I heard something scrape lightly against the back door. Not a knock, more like someone dragging a fingernail or a key along the metal. Then the handle moved, slowly, not like someone forcing it, like someone testing whether I had locked it properly. I remember staring at the bottom of the office door and trying not to breathe too loudly. The dispatcher asked if I could still hear the person. I whispered yes. Then there was another sound, a soft thud. Then another. I realized he was not at the back door anymore. He was at the office window. The blinds were closed, but I could see a shadow through the bent slat. Someone was standing just outside the window, less than 6 feet from me. I moved away from the desk and sat with my back against the filing cabinet. The store phone rang again. This time, after 2 rings, it stopped. Then the man outside spoke. I could hear him through the window. "You don't need to call anyone." He did not yell. That made it worse. He said it like we were having a normal conversation. I stayed quiet. He tapped on the glass once. Then he walked away. I heard the back door move again. 1 beep. The door opened wider this time. I looked through the small gap under the office door and saw the hallway light change. Someone had stepped inside. The dispatcher told me officers were almost there. I could hear the man moving in the back hallway. He was not running. He was walking slowly, like he did not think he needed to hurry. The office handle moved. Once. Then again. I pressed my back harder against the filing cabinet and held the phone with both hands. The handle stopped. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then, I heard him whisper through the door.
I know you're alone.
That was the first time I started crying. Not loudly, just enough that I had to cover my mouth. Then the sirens came. As soon as they got close, the man ran. I heard the back door slam open, then the sound of shoes on gravel in the alley. The police pulled in from both sides of the strip mall. They did not catch him that night. The silver sedan was gone by the time they got around back. But they found how he got in. A strip of clear packing tape had been placed over the latch plate of the back door. Not enough to make the door swing open by itself, just enough to stop it from locking properly. The officer said it was a common trick. Someone could set it earlier, wait until closing, then pull the door open from outside. The next morning, the pharmacist checked the security footage. At 8:34, the man in the baseball cap walked toward the allergy aisle. Then he looked around and stepped into the back hallway for less than 10 seconds. That was when he put the tape on the latch. At 8:39, he stood near the register while I was helping another customer. He was not looking at the candy or the medicine. He was looking at the employee schedule clipped to the wall beside the register. It had everyone's first name and shift times. Mine was written next to Thursday closing. That was how he knew I would be alone. The strangest part was the first beep. The outside camera showed the man near the dumpster at 9:17. But the first beep happened at 9:12. The police said the camera angle was bad and he might have been standing out of frame. Maybe that was true. But I know what I heard. The back door opened once before anyone appeared in the alley. I stopped working there after that. The pharmacist changed the locks, moved the schedule, and installed better cameras. But for months, whenever I heard the beep of a door sensor in any store, I thought about that night. 1 beep when the door opened. No second beep. And someone waiting outside, knowing I was the only one left inside. The first call came from room 214 at 1:13 in the morning. That would have been normal if room 214 had been occupied. It had been empty for 6 months. I was working the front desk at a small hotel off the interstate. My shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., but after midnight, the job was mostly paperwork. The lobby lights stayed on, the front doors locked from the outside. Guests could still get in with key cards. It was not a fancy hotel. 2 floors, outdoor parking, an ice machine near the side entrance. a vending machine that took people's money at least once a week. Room 214 was on the second floor at the end of the hall. No one stayed in it, because there had been a leak in the ceiling months earlier. The carpet had been pulled up, the room smelled like mildew, and management had marked it out of service in the system. The door still locked, but no keycards were supposed to work on it. At 1:13, the front desk phone rang. The screen said, I stared at it for a second. I thought maybe the phone system was glitching. That happened sometimes. A room line would flash even when no one had picked it up. I answered. For a few seconds, there was only static. Then a man said,
Can you come up here?
His voice was low and flat. I looked at the room chart on the computer. 214 was marked out of service. I said, Which room are you in? He said,
You know which room.
I did not like that answer. I told him that room was not rented. There was a pause. Then he said,
Then why did you put me in it?
I hung up. I know that was not professional, but I was alone. It was after 1 a.m, and no one was supposed to be in that room. I called my manager. No answer. Then I checked the keycard log. Every time a card was made, the system recorded it. No card had been made for 214 that night. The last card made for that room was from months earlier, before the leak. I thought about calling the police right away, but I also did not want to sound ridiculous if it was just a phone glitch, so I checked the hallway camera. The camera did not show the door to 214 directly. It showed the long, second-floor hallway leading to it. The hallway was empty. The light near the far end flickered every few seconds. Then the phone rang again. I let it ring twice before answering. This time, I did not say anything. Neither did he. I could hear breathing. Then he said,
I can see you at the desk.
I looked up. The lobby had a large glass front window facing the parking lot. Across from it, near the far end of the lot, was the side of the building where the second-floor rooms were. From the desk, I could see the outside walkway. And from the outside walkway, someone could see into the lobby if the blinds were open. I slowly turned my head toward the window. Room 214 was not directly above the lobby. It was farther down, near the side stairwell. But the walkway wrapped around the building. If someone was standing outside that room, they could see into the lobby from an angle. I could not see anyone, just the parking lot. A few cars. The reflection of the lobby lights in the glass. I locked the front desk drawer and grabbed the small can of pepper spray I kept in my bag. Then, I called the non-emergency police number. While I was explaining it, a guest came down from the second floor. He was an older man, staying in room 210. He walked into the lobby in sweatpants and looked annoyed. He said someone had been knocking on his door. I asked when. He said, just now. He thought it was kids messing around. I asked if he saw anyone. He said no, but he heard someone walking away toward the end of the hall. Toward room 214. That was when I called 911 instead. The guest stayed in the lobby with me while we waited. I was grateful for that, even though neither of us said much. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then the desk phone rang again. The guest looked at the screen. I answered, but I put it on speaker. At first, there was only static. Then the same man said,
I told you to come up here.
The guest whispered, hang up. I did. The police arrived a few minutes later. 2 officers went upstairs while one stayed with me in the lobby. On the hallway camera, I watched them walk toward the end of the second floor. One officer knocked on 214. No answer. Then he tried the handle. Locked. The second officer asked if we had a master key. I gave it to the officer in the lobby, and he took it upstairs. The master key did not work. That was when everyone got quiet. Master keys worked on every guest room unless the lock battery was dead. The officers forced the door open. The room was empty, at least at first glance. The carpet was still pulled up. Plastic sheets covered part of one wall. The bed frame had been pushed near the window, and the old mattress was standing upright by the bathroom. But the phone was off the hook. The receiver was lying on the floor. One officer picked it up and asked if I could hear him at the desk. The front desk phone lit up again. I answered. This time, it was the officer. So the phone worked. Someone had called from that room. While they searched, one officer found the window unlocked. Room 214 had a small window that opened onto the outdoor walkway. It was not supposed to open more than a few inches, but the safety stop had been removed. That meant someone could climb in from the walkway if they knew the window was loose. Then they found a duffel bag behind the upright mattress. Inside were 2 shirts, a phone charger, a half-empty bottle of water, a pack of cheap razors, and several key cards from different hotels. None of the cards belonged to ours. One of the officers said people sometimes used old cards to slip side doors, laundry rooms, or storage areas. They checked the stairwell camera next. At 12:58, a man in a dark jacket came up the side stairs. His hood was up, and his face was turned away from the camera. He walked toward the end of the hall and disappeared near room 214. At 1:07, he came back into view and walked toward room 210, the guest's room. He stood outside that door for almost a full minute. He did not knock at first, he just stood there. Then he knocked softly and moved away before the guest opened it. At 1:13, the first call came to the desk. The cameras never clearly showed him leaving. There was a blind spot near the end of the walkway, where the building turned toward the maintenance ladder. That was probably how he got out. One officer found muddy shoe prints on the narrow ledge outside the second-floor walkway. The prints led toward the ladder and down behind the building. My manager came in around 3 a.m. At first, he looked irritated, like I had overreacted and caused a problem for the hotel. Then the officer showed him the duffel bag and the footage. He stopped talking. The next morning, maintenance checked room 214. They found that the window had been tampered with from the outside. The safety stop was not broken. It had been unscrewed. That meant whoever had been using that room had taken his time. He had made himself a way in and a way out. No one knew how long he had been staying there. I quit a month later, not because of one phone call, because for the rest of the time I worked there, I could not sit at the front desk without looking at the glass. Every time the phone rang, I checked the room number first. And every time a guest asked for extra towels or a new key, I thought about that man watching from the second floor. What scared me most was not that someone had been inside an empty room. It was that he knew the front desk clerk would eventually be sent to check it. And that night, the front desk clerk was me. Closing shifts feel safe because they are repetitive. Same doors, same lights, same checklist, same walk to the car. But repetition can become a pattern. And once someone notices that pattern, they do not need to force their way in. They just need to wait for the part of the night when you stop looking.